Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the resignation of Transport Secretary Louise Haigh from the government. For me, a big blow, but also this must be the weakest resignation I think I can ever remember. If this is the sort of standard of political scandal we're going to be getting from Labour, then the Tories are going to have to be very, very quiet when you look at their charge sheet. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So let's go over the reasons for the resignation first of all. Then I'm going to engage in a bit of whataboutery with Tory ministers who did much worse and didn't even resign over their own offences. So in her 20s, Haigh was mugged. That's not her fault. She gave the police a list of things which were stolen, including her work phone. However, it turns out the phone wasn't stolen. At some point, she turned the phone on. The police were alerted because, of course, it's been reported stolen. Asked her to turn herself in. She did. She was subsequently charged with fraud. On the advice of her solicitor, she pleaded guilty and so has a conviction. Now, Haigh claims that it was a genuine mistake, that her solicitor advised her to say nothing to the police and then plead guilty to the magistrate. And she says, yeah, I really should have followed that advice. The counterclaim is a young woman saw an opportunity to get a newer phone from her employer and took advantage. Now, I don't know which version of events is true. I know which one I'd like to think. I don't know her personally. Both are plausible. According to reports, she had disclosed this conviction to Starmer when he appointed her to his shadow cabinet. And of course, she would have had full vetting, on entering government. Her conviction wouldn't show up on any checks because the conviction is no longer on her record. It's a minor offence. The conviction was spent a very long time ago. So I'm guessing the resignation is a genuine resignation on the part of Haigh because, it would be very poor behaviour for Starmer to have known about this conviction and said, yeah, it's absolutely fine, and then expect her to fall on the sword just because someone made it public. So as far as I can tell, this is looking like Haigh putting the government first and not wanting any easy lines of attack on Labour over an act of stupidity in her 20s. And whether that act of stupidity was listening to an idiot solicitor or actually fancying a better work phone, it's nothing like on the level of some of the Tory big hitters. Let us go through a few. Grant Shapps first. He's been in charge of multiple government departments, including the Home Office and Defence Department. But before entering Parliament, he was involved in a few dodgy business practices, including selling get-rich-quick schemes. The most notorious was charging money for a way to, you pay me this money, you guarantee $20,000 in 20 days. So when people paid for this, this is a good return, I'll pay you a few $100s for this. What they got in return was a guide to running the same scam themselves. Well, here's what you do. Here's how you make yourself rich. Make your own get-rich-quick scheme and sell it to others. After entering Parliament, he used fake names to hide second jobs. When it was exposed, he threatened legal action. I absolutely did not at all. But then, because he actually did, he then had to admit it. Sorry, I made a mistake. David Cameron said, mistakes were made, let's all move on. The usual stuff. None of this stopped Shapps being able to run some of the most important government departments. And although he's not got a conviction, as far as I know, for fraud, that's fraud, surely. That's proper fraud. Then there's David Cameron himself. After leaving Parliament, he used his contacts with the government and civil servants to lobby for preferential treatment for Greensill Capital. Cameron made millions out of the arrangement. I think tens of millions. A committee later found that David Cameron had not actually broken any rules, but this was only because the rules were shit. That it should not have been within the rules. Only now with Labour, those rules are actually finally being tightened up. Not to worry, when the Tories come back to power, they'll just drop them again. Then there's Boris Johnson. What a rap sheet he's got. Broke his own COVID laws, thus undermining our defence against a future pandemic. Because now what's going to happen? We are going to get hit with a pandemic again. We are going to have to carry out, hopefully our response will be better next time. But nonetheless, there is going to have to be some requirement for people to change their behaviour. And people may be less inclined to do so. And when he got caught out, tried everything to dodge responsibility. Even having the nerve to tell people who did follow the rules and could not be with loved ones as they were dying, that they were essentially stupid for doing so. A man of so little moral fibre that Parliament investigated for him for contempt of Parliament and didn't just find him guilty. They found him guilty of 5 different types, not counts, 5 different types of contempt. He was only been investigated for 1, so he committed the other 4 during the investigation itself. It's like being charged for murder and then actually killing four people in court while you're being tried. Of course, he never should have been Prime Minister in the first place. Conservative MPs knew he was a Russian asset. So much so, it was alleged that Theresa May didn't allow him direct oversight over MI6 when he was the Foreign Secretary, although she does dispute this. But what isn't disputed is that Tories knew he'd been compromised. I mean, later on, when he put literally a Russian oligarch with close links to Putin in the House of Lords, I mean, that was a bit of a clue, wasn't it, to the slow learners? But the Tories stuck by him through all of this, only giving him his marching orders when he compromised their personal safety by putting a sexual predator in the whip's office. And when he was about to fall, he promoted Nadhim Zahawi to Chancellor whilst he was under investigation by HMRC for massive tax evasion. Zahawi being the very nice chap who very kindly charged the taxpayer to heat his own personal stables, and clearly wanted to use his position as Chancellor to do what he could to put pressure on HMRC over his investigation. After it was concluded, he claims, it was an honest mistake, and there the investigation proves it was an honest mistake. HMRC put out a statement basically making it clear, no, this is not the case. And tax experts pointed out, HMRC do not levy fines against people making genuine mistakes, which I can attest to. I cocked up a tax return when I first started doing them, and they accepted my reasons and didn't fine me. Zahawi was fined millions. Then Robert Jenrick, who in return for a free dinner abused his position to rob a council of tens of millions of pounds in taxes for a property developer. He was not only allowed to remain in government, but given the chance to lead the party. And as for who is now leading the party, Kemi Badenoch, she admitted to hacking the website of a very senior at the time serving MP, Labour's Harriet Harman. At the time, she was a member of the government. She was leader of the House of Commons. So this was an assault on the government and Parliament. But regardless of whose website she hacked, it was website after she'd finished with it, it was a serious criminal offence, which, if charged, could have resulted in a prison sentence of up to 5 years. At the time Badenoch admitted to it, about 10 years after she committed the offence, other Tory MPs were aghast. Absolutely appalled they were. Not that she'd done it, but that she'd happily admitted to it when she was under no pressure to. We had Suella Braverman, who as Home Secretary had to be sacked for recklessly compromising national security, then got her job back less than a week later. Her predecessor, Priti Patel, who was found guilty of bullying and allowed to continue, is now Shadow Foreign Secretary. She was also sacked from the government a few years before because she went behind her own government's back to hold secret talks with a foreign power, Israel in this case. Now, it's not in a legal sense, but I mean, that's essentially treason, really, isn't it? Even James Cleverly's joke about using date rape drugs on his wife is surely more serious than a Transport Secretary making a mistake, whichever mistake you think she made, in her 20s before entering Parliament. Personally, I'm very disappointed with the resignation. I wish she hadn't resigned. Haigh was certainly in my top 5 of cabinet ministers so far in this Labour government, and her job was also really important, like getting transport back on its feet. That is going to be a big part of dealing with the rise of populism. And she was going to have to do it on a shoestring. Unlike, say, the Department for Health, transport is not one of those departments getting a boost in funding. So the next Transport Secretary had better not only be someone who understands the need to properly fix transport, but they're going to have to know how to do it really efficiently. In terms of the politics, I mean, of course it will work in Labour's favour in the short term. Story broke last night. Haigh had resigned before I'd even had my breakfast. Labour can make a big show of rebuilding trust in politics, even when it means making personal sacrifices, and then follow up with the charge sheet of senior Tories who failed to exercise such moral fortitude themselves. And as I say, their current leader admitted to a very, very serious criminal offence. So this could put pressure on the Tories, and it's made all the easier because I suspect most people won't really think Haigh committed such a terrible crime at all. I mean, those who are very anti-Labour will, of course they will. Those who are, he's absolutely disgraceful, Labour, disgusted. But that's just tribal behaviour, right? But most ordinary voters, I don't think they're going to see this as like a big issue, and they're going to think to themselves, ooh, Labour are holding themselves to high standards here, aren't they? Much higher standards than the Tories. Bafflingly higher, if you ask me. But there it is. And although I rattled through a few Tory luminaries, let us not forget that a Reform UK MP was imprisoned for kicking the crap out of his girlfriend. So Farage will have nothing to talk about either. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.